Hi, my name is Holly. I'm a third-year social work student. I'm a practicum student with the Learning Disabilities Association of Manitoba. And today we'll be talking about reading and writing strategies, which is the third part in the online learning series. Last time I had spoken about time management barriers and organization skills, and today we'll be tackling on different methods of note-taking, essay prep, and also discussing reading and active reading skills. Cornell Method. So the Cornell Method, as you can see in the template, is it divides your page. So you would leave about your left side of your page some space, about, I want to say about 2 inches for questions. So if you can recall from my outlining notes, each header is going to be changed into a question, which I will show. And then they have some of your key concepts, keywords, and diagrams and details on the other side of the box. On the bottom half, it does give you the option to summarize your notes, which is, like I said before, very helpful for you to recall and condense the information so that when you're kind of like in a test, you can kind of remember some paragraphs that you had condensed your information into. Some of the pros to this is that it's easier to review by turning key concepts into questions. It can create efficient study sheets. Some of the cons for the Cornell method is that it does need some time to prepare. So you're going to have to prepare your sheet before the lecture, or this might even be like your rewriting session. You might free write your notes during the lecture and then go home and rewrite your notes. Also, another con is requires some time for summarizing. So I had also done, I have not used the Cornell method a lot, but for this, I also kind of recreated it. So from my high school notes, I recreated it and translated it into the Cornell method. So for the Cornell notes, as you can see, I changed my headings into, my main headings into questions. So the main heading was chromosome mutations. So instead of writing that, I wrote, what are the 4 types of chromosome mutations? And then I also added my key details on the other side of the box. So I can kind of zoom in. For my titles to stand out, I like to box them. So I highly recommend looking at different people's notes and seeing how they make their notes stand out. People use different types of banners and flags. In my summarization, I saw some people using like a banner, like a flag. I summarized around the summary box, which I kind of like to make my notes stand out and make me want to like dress it up a bit. The Cornell method is actually, I find, really helpful because of the summarization. And also it does give you the option of turning your headers into questions. And I also utilize color coordinating your notes just for them just to stand out. So definitions are in a different color. I have details in white and examples in orange. And then the next one is the Mindmap method. So in this template is kind of like bubbles. There's also the flow chart, boxes, different ways people use arrows. So there's different ways of the Mindmap method, but the one that I commonly see are like the bubbles. Some pros would be it displays it in a visually oriented way. You can make connection between main ideas. So if you're a very visual person, this would be very helpful to have things laid out. Sometimes an outline is a little too restrictive or a little too formal for some people, and they like the freedom of drawing around their main ideas. Some of the cons would be that not all information can be displayed in a graphic format. It can also be very difficult to create during a lecture. So this would probably be more ideal for rewriting your notes. So this app is the Simple Mind Light app. So as you can see, I rewrote my notes in the way of like a mind map method. So I have my chromosome mutations kind of in a green. So you can really color coordinate your notes here using this app that has an inspector. It gives you the options of choosing different colors. One of the great things about this app is that it does give you the option to hide it. So if you wanted to use this not only as a note-taking method, but also for studying, if you kind of want to hide all your information and kind of memorize it, and then go back and see if you can say it. So this was actually another way of using, of taking notes. one is called Simple Mind Light. So this is the free version. I don't think you need the premium one. This one provides mainly everything that I find. I think the premium, you might be able to have images on there and maybe download some files, but to me, just some of the wording is just, and you can change the colors. So I think that should do. Yeah, so for the next one, we're going to be going right into essay writing tips. So for essay writings, I'm sure you guys are all familiar on writing the essay and kind of like creating an outline. I find that when I start early, the better it is. I'm currently in the process of doing a case assessment. So in social work, in this one, I have to read a case. So I had to watch a film. So that's an hour and 40 minutes. So taking notes. So starting early as much as you can, detailing all the tasks that you had to do. Last time I showed the app Taskade, which was a very helpful app and laying out all the stuff that you have to do, breaking down into steps and creating a plan. One of the main things that I find with essay writing is I like the freedom of not having to write everything in order. I'm not sure about you guys, but I absolutely do not write in order. My introduction always comes last. I find that there's too much pressure for me when I write in order, especially with the introduction, just because introductions are supposed to pull the reader in. And I feel like in that introduction, I don't have all that information yet to pull the reader in and convince them to stay reading. I really do like using an outline method to lay out all my ideas so that when I'm writing, everything comes much more clear. I also like to point out that I'm more of an editor. So the first draft is the kind of like I'm brain splatting. So my first draft, my writing is not formal, it's informal. And I like the process of the second draft where I get to be more formal, change the language, adding the transitioning. For essay writing tips, number 3, to write a better essay, I find that reading will definitely help you. Take notice of some of the medical journals that you read or whatever class or reports. Take notice of the structure of that paper. Notice the abstract, the conclusion, the transitioning sentences that are using, how they're creating better flow. If you're doing an essay in psychology, try reading an essay in like the medical journals and just see how they're coming together and what kind of language is being used. That I definitely will help succeed in your writing. I also have some apps and tips for you guys to utilize in your essay writing so that you can maximize your time. So I'll just pull up Google Chrome. Are you guys familiar with Google Chrome extensions? Yeah, nice. So the first one I have introduced is the Viva highlighter. So as a person, I have it right now. As a student in social work, my degree is very based on papers. So I have a lot of papers. So the first one, Viva highlighter, is very great because it gives you the option of highlighting onto the page. So you can highlight all of your important notes. So as you can see, websites normally will not allow you to highlight any of the information. Back before I used this, I would just write out all my notes and then kind of put in brackets the website. If I was using on a PDF page number, this is easier because you can highlight it, come back to it. And this does give you the option of going into a folder and saving all of your notes, which should pop up right over here, as you can see. But yeah, this should be very helpful when taking notes, especially if you have many, many websites to recall through. Another recommendation for essay writing that I highly, highly recommend is Toby. So Toby is a tab organizer. So instead of having multiple windows with like 10 to 15 tabs each, you can actually save all your tabs into a collection. And then by the end of the time you're done with your study session, you can close everything as opposed to leaving everything on and putting your computer into sleep mode. Sometimes when you're using your personal time for your own time and then your school time, you might have your computer crash. So this will save your computer and also not slow it down. One of the good things about this, if it's not into a collection yet, you can also save the session and you can save it for later. You can also have the option of putting it in for school, personal. I have kind of social media, shopping, anything I kind of want to save into there. And then the next one is reading strategies. So when you're as a student, I'm sure we've all been presented with lots of papers, a lot of things to read, textbooks. Some of the tips that I find is using SQ3R, which stands for survey, question, read, recite, and review. I found this very helpful when I first got into the faculty of social work because our prof would send us with about, I guess, like 3 chapters and like 2 more articles on top of that, which all was like 20 pages each, which is a lot of stuff to read through and to understand. So I find that if you get to survey, so survey means kind of looking at the headers, looking at the learning objectives, give your time to even look through all the pages, see what stands out. I know in some textbooks, they'll have like a star or they'll show the definitions on the side. I noticed a lot with like family social sciences, those textbooks will show all their definitions on the side and also have it bolded. So that's also very helpful. Like take notice of what kind of textbook you're using. My textbooks are just very formal, so it doesn't have really that option, not much color. Question. So the second part of that is turning your headers into questions. Then reading through the material. So once you turn those headers into questions, kind of answer that question. So by reading through it and then reciting. So recite through. So after you finish reading through that, recite it. See if you can answer the question that you've made when you made that header into a question, and also again, reviewing and just checking through the textbook. Also with reading through online is active reading. So for some people, it might be hard to read through a lot of those pages, like 20 pages. I find with older medical journals or even older articles from like the 1990s, it's not very user-friendly on the eyes, especially because the margins are very tight, the writing's very dark. So using kind of like, if you need to break up your reading into paragraphs, I totally recommend that. Highlighting if you want to like have a PDF. So if you have kind of a short attention span, I highly recommend just reading through that paragraph and then writing a brief sentence on the side of what you've just read. I also find that very helpful. Active reading skills is also creating a check mark in the margin next to things, check mark to things that you understand, and a question marks next to the things that you may struggle to understand. So for example, for me, when I'm writing a case study that's probably like 20, 30, 40 pages long, I take the time to read through all of it. And then anything that needs for me to re-look back into it, I will circle it or I will put a question mark, just for me to kind of understand, to go back into, because sometimes when you're reading an article, you might not comprehend everything the first time. So I find that maybe taking a break, go to back at the next day, come looking through the article with fresh eyes could also much help. So I will show you guys some more Google Chrome extensions that will help you for reading and writing. Let me just. So for example, this is one of the articles that I'm looking at for a class. For individuals who have trouble kind of comprehending some information, I highly recommend looking into this Chrome extension called Podcastle. So I have it right here. This gives you the option of turning all of your text into audio, which is very helpful especially if there's certain concepts you might not understand by reading it, but if you can hear it, that's very helpful. One of the great things about this app is this does give you the option to download. So if you ever have an article that you need to read through, but let's say, for example, you're driving and you kind of want just to kind of listen, give yourself a head start, just to kind of understand what you're going through, highly recommend that. Also with Podcastle is that I believe it's probably one of the only few apps that the voice is very as natural as you can get, so it's not very robotic. So the person who is speaking, you can choose the option of a female speaker or a male speaker. They have they pause through their speech, so it's very natural as you can get, not robotic and kind of strained with the voice. So I find that very helpful when you're reading articles, if you need that additional support with audio. I also highly recommend, where is using the app called Visor. So if you get distracted by some of the speech, what Visor would do, it's kind of like a reading ruler. So individuals who may struggle with dyslexia could also benefit from this. And so what it does is that it's kind of like it highlights some of your text and kind of distracts and kind of blanks out the other. That's how I adjusted it. So I'll pull up over here. It does give, this is the power and on button. This will give you different color schemes. So if you kind of want like a pink, kind of green, this does give you the option of lightening it up or darkening it if you'd like to your liking. And also you can extend the view. So if you want it higher or kind of lower, just like that. So when you're reading papers, this would be very helpful if you need to cut down on some of the distractions that shows on the screen. Okay, so I showed up the cystic fibrosis page for MMD. I'm bringing that up again just to show an example of this app. So this app is called Mercury Reader. As you can see on this page, can you guys see how many ads that I have up on here? I have a Grammarly app, I have a Tylenol ad, I have more ads, Adobe ads. As you can see, when you're some research paper, I even have clothing, I have lots of ads on this, can really distract you from reading and also kind of slow down your computer sometimes. So what the Mercury app does is that it declutters it and it just makes it into a very clean page so that you won't be distracted by any of the ads. I think last week I was searching up certain articles and it showed all of my kind of like, it tailors your ads. So like if you were looking at boots for some reason, and then all of a sudden all you see your ads are just boots on sale. So yeah, so this was just kind of get rid of all that clutter. So with the Mercury Reader, as you can see, there's this kind of like wheel button, and then it'll give you the option of choosing from a dark. I like to work at nighttime, so I really love the dark mode every time I get that option. This does gives you only 2 options for text, and also does give you the option for increasing the size. So I hope that's very helpful. I know that I use this a lot, especially when when I go on to like researching recipes, very cluttered with ads and different types of appliances to buy, which I don't really need to see. Yep, so that actually concludes the rest of my presentation.